In 2025, China launched more ships than every other country on Earth put together, not by a small margin, by more than double. Right now, nearly 70% of every new ship being ordered anywhere on the planet is being built in China. That means the majority of ships that will carry the world's oil, gas, and cargo for the next 30 years have already been designed, ordered, and are being assembled right now in Chinese shipyards. These are not small vessels. These are oil tankers so massive that 3 football fields fit inside their length. So tall that their engine alone stands as high as a 4-story building. So powerful that a single voyage carries enough oil to meet 10% of America's entire daily consumption. This is not just a story about ships. It is a story about who controls the flow of energy on this planet, and that race is already over. How a 3-way competition became a solo sprint for decades. Shipbuilding was a competition between 3 countries: Japan, South Korea, and China. Japan had the precision that came from generations of craftsmanship. South Korea had cutting-edge technology and a reputation for speed. China had the scale, the workforce, and the hunger to grow faster than anyone expected. Western nations watched this dynamic and felt comfortable. As long as those 3 kept competing, no single country could grab too much control. It felt balanced. Safe, then China stopped playing the same game. It did not get better at building ships the traditional way. It went back to the drawing board and rebuilt the entire system from the ground up, from raw steel to finished vessel. It changed the rules entirely. And once you change the rules, the old scoreboard stops mattering. By 2025, China was producing 53.69 million deadweight tons of ships in a single year, more than 56% of everything built on the entire planet. South Korea, which was neck and neck with China just a decade earlier, was watching from a significant distance behind. Japan had fallen even further back. The 3-way race had quietly become a solo sprint, and the order books told an even bigger story. Nearly 7 out of every 10 new ships being ordered anywhere in the world were going to Chinese yards. The global fleet of 2040 and 2050, the ships that will still be sailing when today's teenagers are middle-aged, is being shaped in China right now. When you control what gets built today, you control how the world moves tomorrow. What these ships actually are: a very large crude carrier, what the industry calls a VLCC, is one of the biggest moving objects ever created by human hands. 330 meters long, 3 football fields end to end, 60 meters wide. It carries around 2 million barrels of crude oil in a single trip. The United States uses approximately 20 million barrels every single day. One of these ships carries roughly 10% of that in one voyage. The steel alone that goes into a single VLCC weighs about 55,000 tons, roughly the same as 7 Eiffel Towers. And every plate of that steel, every cut, every weld, every joint across that entire mountain of metal has to be close to perfect. Because the ocean does not forgive shortcuts. Waves in the North Atlantic can bend steel beams. Pacific storms have swallowed ships whole. Inside the hull, 2 million barrels of crude oil does not sit still. It sloshes, it surges, it slams against the walls with every wave, creating internal pressure that beats on the structure from the inside out for decades. A ship like this has to survive all of that continuously for 25 to 30 years. And China can build one from raw steel plates to a sea-ready vessel in under 2 years. The method that changed everything traditional shipbuilding started from the bottom and worked upward, 1 layer at a time. The process used to take 4 to 5 years. Chinese engineers broke the entire concept apart. First, they take the blueprint and slice it into more than 100 giant sections on paper. Each section weighs between 300 and 600 tons. Then they build each section completely separately on the ground, adding pipes, electrical wiring, and protective coatings before it ever connects to the main structure. Then massive cranes pick these finished sections up and lock them into position like the world's most expensive jigsaw puzzle. This is called modular block construction, the same thinking aerospace engineers use when assembling rockets. Instead of doing everything sequentially, dozens of things happen simultaneously and come together at the end. A ship that used to take 4 to 5 years is now finished in under 2. And the quality does not drop. In many ways, it improves because each section can be inspected and perfected independently before it becomes part of the whole. The technology behind the precision taking 100 giant steel blocks, each weighing hundreds of tons, and making them align to within a hair's width, that is the problem that could break the entire system. Across China's biggest shipyards, millions of tiny sensors are embedded throughout the construction environment. These sensors feed data continuously into AI systems that monitor every measurement, every position, every movement in real time. If a section shifts even slightly out of alignment, the system flags it immediately. Not when a worker notices. Immediately, the deviations this system catches are not the size of a finger or a coin. They are the size of a human hair. An error of a few millimeters on section 5 becomes a few centimeters by section 50, and a serious structural flaw by section 100. By catching and correcting them instantly, the system guarantees that when those blocks come together, they fit like they were always meant to be one piece. Then, there is the welding. Every joint on a ship has to hold for 25 to 30 years in salt water, under constant load, through storms, through thousands of tons of shifting liquid, through temperature extremes from the tropics to the Arctic. A human welder, no matter how talented, gets tired. Speed shifts, pressure changes. So China handed the most critical welding to robots. Laser welding arms work around the clock on steel plates up to 50 millimeters thick, maintaining the same temperature, the same speed, the same pressure for hours, for days, without variation. The combination of modular construction, AI-guided precision monitoring, and robotic welding is not simply a faster version of traditional shipbuilding. It is a fundamentally different way of thinking about the problem. The new ships nobody expected, China's newest tankers, do not just refine what came before. They represent a complete shift in what a ship is supposed to be. The Jin is a VLCC with rigid sails standing 40 meters tall on its deck, built from ultra-light carbon fiber. Not decorative callbacks to the age of sailing ships. Aerodynamically engineered structures that capture wind energy and feed it directly into the ship's propulsion system. Under real-world conditions, they reduce fuel consumption by 9.8%. Across 30 years of operation, that percentage saves millions of dollars per vessel. The Yuan Ruiyang takes a different approach, a dual-fuel system, switching between diesel and liquefied natural gas, depending on costs, port regulations, and environmental standards. 333 meters long. The system cuts carbon dioxide emissions by 20% and slashes sulfur emissions by up to 85%. And the newest generation is built to last 30 years instead of 25. 5 extra years sounds modest. For a ship carrying millions of barrels of oil per voyage, those 5 years represent hundreds of millions of dollars in additional operating value. The power nobody voted for. 60% of all the oil traded anywhere in the world travels by sea, and the vast majority of those ships were built in China. Every barrel moving from the Gulf to Europe, from the Middle East to Asia, from West Africa to the United States, overwhelmingly travels on a ship a Chinese yard built. And it does not end at the sail. Spare parts, technical support, maintenance, software updates, all of it comes back to China, over and over, for 30 years. Chinese banks made it even deeper financing packages that made it easier for shipping companies worldwide to say yes than to say no. For most of history, energy power meant oil in the ground. But oil in the ground goes nowhere without ships. And ships don't exist without shipyards. China is not drilling in the Gulf. It is building the vessels that move everything. That is not a shipbuilding story. That is a power story. Drop your answer in the comments, subscribe, and hit the bell.